Here we are, gonna get back in it. And now it's all new for me again. Don't have to worry about any of that. So here's Sam, just running away. She doesn't look like she's moving, but she's running away. And we're gonna come in here and solve all the problems. She didn't know where she was going, and she didn't care. She just wanted to get away, to escape. But what she really wanted to escape from, she could never leave. How could she part with her own mind when her mind made her who she was, diseased though it may have been? It wasn't possible. The wind ran through her hair and stung her cheeks, painting them red. A sharp metallic taste filled her mouth. Saliva rose to her throat, sharp and bitter. She tried to swallow it down, but this only made her feel worse. Her stomach hurt. It felt like a small monster was nesting inside her, tearing at her insides with its sharp claws and serrated teeth. She winced, coming to a halt by a large tree. She pressed one hand against its bark, a comforting, solid presence, and doubled over, the other hand held against her stomach. Tears gathered in the corner of her eyes, salty like sea air. Samantha never seemed to run out of tears. She was like a banshee. She could cry for hours, and she didn't even need a reason to. Sometimes she broke down while doing the most mundane of tasks, balling her socks or brushing her teeth, and she had no idea why. One day, perhaps she would cry so much she would float away in a sea of her own tears, just like Alice. Maybe she'd be happier like that. She had always hated living in London. Samantha's stomach churned. The unpleasant aftertaste of those highly caffeinated energy drinks was coming back to haunt her. Roberta had been right. She couldn't have drunk so much. Shouldn't have drunk so much. Why had she drunk so much? It was because she didn't know her own limits. She shouldn't have felt this bad, though. She hadn't even drunk any alcohol. Well, why are you drinking alcohol? Aren't you like 12? This was pathetic. She was pathetic. No wonder Georgia made fun of her. No wonder Roberta got mad at her. No wonder Lillian hated her. New tears began to drip down Samantha's cheeks. Her stomach hurt. She couldn't breathe. Was she having a panic attack? Maybe it was because she wasn't going to be sick, and she did not want to be. Maybe it was because she was going to be sick. She didn't have to be. She was stronger than that. She was... wasn't she? Probably not. Her throat burned. Her mouth kept filling with bile despite her efforts to swallow it back down. She leaned her body against the nearby tree trunk, pressing her hand against it hard for support. Her palm hurt. Had she scratched it against the tree? Maybe she was bleeding. She didn't know. What she did know, however, was that approximately 5 seconds later she was sick. Horribly, painfully, seemingly endlessly sick, as she vomited everything she had eaten over the last 8 hours onto the ground. Thankfully, what she had eaten did not constitute very much. Her vomit was clear, almost entirely liquid, but it still burnt her throat when it came back up. Oh well, never mind. She had experienced worse. Samantha wiped her chin with the back of her arm and straightened up, or at least she attempted to. The moment she did, she was attacked by a sudden spell of dizziness that almost knocked her off her feet. Maybe she should have gotten more sleep last night. Why hadn't she gotten more sleep? Samantha liked sleeping. It was one of her favorite states of being. But getting to sleep had been hard lately. Being Samantha in general was hard, but these last 3 months had been more painful than most. Samantha sniffed and wiped her eyes. They felt red and raw, and rubbing them only made them hurt. Where was she anyway? Ah yes, because the panning will help me figure out where we are so much more. This did not help at all. It just revealed another 3 or 4 feet of the same thing we saw over here. Now we actually know less of where we are, because we could see that the water went further on. Now it just looks like more trees. She peeked out from behind the trunk of the tree she had been leaning against and examined her surroundings. It didn't really make much difference. Yeah, it didn't. The land was just as nondescript, with its unbroken line of rolling hills, as it had been 10 minutes ago. Unbroken line of rolling hills. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of trees in the line of sight. I don't even see any hills. It all looks flat. There's a river. Samantha had been lost then, and she was still lost now. She had no idea where she was. Beyond the large tree trunk, the boughs still stripped bare from the winter, she could see a lake. The surface was dark and murky like black tea inside a teacup. The wind whistled over the top of the water, making it ripple. It was soothing, pretty. Other people may have deemed this sight decidedly unremarkable and walked on, but Samantha had always found these visions of nature comforting. Maybe it was because of her childhood. It reminded her of home. The peace and quiet of the countryside, the absence of all other human life, made her feel like an explorer on a newly discovered alien planet. She far, far preferred it here. It was much nicer than the city. Being alone, surrounded by trees, even trees that were recovering from a particularly cold winter, their boughs gnarled and naked, was comforting. If she really did die here, maybe that wouldn't be so bad. She'd prefer dying here, out in the open, surrounded by the smell of dirt and earth and wild flowers, than back in her tiny room in London. If she'd die in London, she would have no peace. Her soul would be besieged by countless others who had met similar fates, alone in apartments with no friends or family, and she would become one of many, another statistic in a nameless, faceless sea. In the countryside, she could be herself. She could be Samantha. When she died, she wanted to die here. But as it soon turned out, Samantha would not be given the chance to curl up and will herself out of existence. Not this time. What? There's another person here. The small, secluded spot wasn't quite as secluded as Samantha had first thought. There was somebody else there. Samantha could see out in the distance a distinctly humanoid figure standing in the lake. Even from a few feet away, with their back facing her, Samantha could tell this person was beautiful. Their long blonde hair fluttering in the breeze attested as much. Though the sun was muted, hidden behind a thick layer of gray clouds, what little light there was able to filter down to the ground seemed to be directed around this single figure, so that her cornflower hair shimmered. The mystery girl seemed completely at ease with her surroundings, as though she belonged there, was one with the landscape itself. Samantha felt as though she was staring at a canvas, and this girl was part of it. To remove the girl from this scene, you would need to cut a hole out of the lake itself, leaving a vast scar of abject nothingness running through the countryside. Samantha did wonder, though. What kind of person would paddle in the middle of a freezing lake in early March? It kind of looks like she walked out there, but I won't question it. Wouldn't she catch a cold? It didn't seem very sensible. Maybe, then, this beautiful girl was not a human girl at all. Maybe she was a fairy, or perhaps an elf, a magical creature descended to Earth from an enchanted sylvan kingdom. Samantha stood there, staring, watching. Her heart hammered painfully inside her chest, threatening to splinter her ribs. Was it just her imagination? Or was her heart beating far, far too loud? What if the mystery girl heard her? What would happen then? Would she cast a spell on her? Bewitch her? If so, it was too late. Samantha was already enchanted. Maybe the beating of her heart really had been that loud after all. The girl out in the lake lifted her head suddenly, like a rabbit alerted to the sound of an approaching predator. And, as if in slow motion, she turned. That looks a little creepy because it's over her back. Her back did not turn. Her head made a 180. All of a sudden, with a gasp of recognition, Samantha realized. She realized something she could have realized a long time ago, as soon as she stumbled upon this apparition paddling in the lake. This was no fairy. Of course it wasn't a fairy. It was, instead, somebody that Samantha knew rather well. I'm thinking it looks like Lillian, but it's hard to tell with the face. It could be Roberta, honestly. But Roberta's not here, and her hair's not that long. The long blonde hair should have given it away, though. She often wore her hair tied up. Samantha had forgotten what it looked like loose around her shoulders like this. It was unmistakably, without a shadow of a doubt. Yep, it's Lillian, none other than Lillian Wordsworth. Out in the middle of the lake, without her group. And she's changed clothes! Look at that. Her hair's all redone up. Well, this is nice. I suppose so. What has happened here? Lillian had tied her blonde hair up once more and was now wearing the rest of her St. Mary's uniform, which she had previously folded beneath a tree before she went paddling. Unlike Samantha, Lillian was a sensible person. Of course she would have ensured her pinafore and cardigan didn't get wet. Samantha should have expected nothing else. Where's her group? The two girls were sat underneath a tree a few yards away from the one Samantha had initially paused at, which Samantha was glad for. Samantha didn't want Lillian realizing just how sick she had been before she had stumbled across her. That would be incredibly embarrassing, and wouldn't be the best way of making a fresh first impression. It was so unfair. Lillian got to return to Samantha's life as a vision of loveliness, an indistinct figure almost like a will-o-wisp, a haunting, magical creature, too breathtaking to be considered truly human. Samantha, on the other hand, must have looked like a wreck. She had just been sick, even though she had tried to wipe the evidence away from her mouth with the back of her hand, and her eyes were red and puffy, making it obvious to anybody with an ounce of common sense that she had been crying. Her short hair, snipped by her own inexpert fingers, had never felt more ridiculously, embarrassingly exposing. Lillian always did tell her she was easy to read, so transparent her skin might as well have been see-through. Samantha never tried to argue the point because she knew Lillian was right. Samantha very rarely tried to hide her true feelings. She didn't have the knack for it. Lillian, on the other hand, had always been more removed, her small smiles carefully constructed. Lillian never came to class late, and she always remembered to brush her hair, and she wore her school uniform with such precision she could almost be termed as a living work of art. The gulf between the two girls had never felt as pronounced as it did now. No wonder Lillian had stopped being her friend. They really were polar opposites, weren't they? Well, Jeez, there's so little talking in this. Samantha blinked shyly, searching for something to say, but the words would not come. Why couldn't she think of anything to say? She was usually good at table talk. It was true her skills had been getting a little rusty, though, through disuse lately, but surely she had one or two interesting ideas knocking around inside her skull. Wasn't she supposed to be intelligent? Not a genius, not by any stretch of the imagination. She was not like Lillian, but at least competently clever. Wasn't she supposed to be Oh, nope. She had even read Kant, and understood most of it, too. What cause did she have for concern, anyway? Her previous conversation with Lillian had gone well, even if it had lasted little more than a minute. She should try to calm down, take a deep breath, and gather whatever wits was still about her. She could do this. She would. It, sure is a coincidence seeing you here. Good start. Good, strong start there. Lillian's reply was cool and concise, quite unlike Samantha's. Not really. You don't think this is coincidence, that this... Have you been following us, or have we been following you? Well, I just didn't expect it. But we came here on the same school trip. Okay, well, I guess that's a fair enough point. It was inevitable we would run into each other again at some point, but it's in the... Yeah, I suppose so, but you're not in my study group, so I thought I wouldn't get the chance. Actually, something suddenly occurred to Samantha. Where is the rest of your group? You didn't get lost too, did you? But even as she said it, Samantha knew it was a foolish question. Lillian Wordsworth did not get lost. She always knew exactly where she was at all times. It was one of her many mysterious talents. I'm not lost. I simply went off on my own for a while. But why? A sigh. Because I had the misfortune of being in a group with one of the most irritating people I know. Look at that, it's not us. We're not the most irritating, well, one of the most. I don't know if this is a bonus for us, never mind. Even more irritating than me? Yeah, there we go, that's what I was thinking. Lillian couldn't help but smile at this comment, as much as she tried to maintain her carefully distant expression. Although Samantha could be an incredibly irritating person when she put her mind to it, and she was more than capable of accomplishing this task even when she did not, there was no denying she could be amusing company sometimes. On occasions. Yes, far more irritating than you. Look at us, we're making conversation. I can hardly believe such a person exists, but it is true. Samantha giggled. You weren't grouped with DeQuincy, were you? The one and the same. How did you guess? Well, you said somebody more irritating than me, which instantly narrows down the list of potential suspects. And as Georgia was in my group antagonizing Roberta, it could not have been her. Dear God, DeQuincy must be a pain if even you realize it, Sam. She can be quite intense at times. Lillian exhaled heavily, holding a hand to her forehead. Intense isn't the right word. She's utterly infuriating. She follows me around like a golden retriever everywhere I go, and she keeps taking photos too. I'm surprised she hasn't asked for a blood sample yet, or a hair from my head. Maybe she takes them when you're asleep, then writes about it on her blog. Please don't remind me about her blog. How could I not? It was so incredible I think about it at least once every day. I'm sure she posted enough personal information about me on there to warrant a restraining order. Well, at least she has good taste. She clearly recognizes your genius. She's a big fan of your poetry, you know. I know, and I am somewhat proud my writing was able to make such an impact on somebody, but when it's at the expense of my own privacy, it does become somewhat unsettling. Well, I think she's taken down that blog now. Are you sure? I did ask her. I didn't think she would listen to me, given she never seems to listen to anybody, but it seemed to work. How are you able to get rid of DeQuincy anyway? She's so devoted, I'm surprised she didn't follow you here. Well, I'm not particularly proud of my actions. I just slapped her, tied her to a tree. We'll find her later. Oh? Does that mean you did something underhanded, Lillian? I simply did what needed to be done. If I had not extricated myself from the situation, I fear I could have done something I would have later come to regret. You can try to dress it up however you want, but you're only making me more and more curious. Just what exactly did you do? Well, I may have bumped into her whilst we were walking, quite accidentally, of course, and because of this purely accidental, unavoidable event, she may have fallen over and twisted her ankle. Damn, I think that's a little bit more than an accident. Just shoved her and ran. Jeez, whoa. Samantha whistled and pressed to spite herself. She must have fallen pretty hard. Hard enough. I pushed her down a hill. I had to make sure it was Gee, doesn't that count as assault? It wasn't assault. I already told you it was an accident. I feel a great deal of remorse about it. Yes. Though Samantha found it amusing, this was rather unexpected news. Lillian was usually too disaffected to allow other people to get under her skin like that. DeQuincy really must have been annoying her for her to resort to violence like that. Though Samantha's own relationship with DeQuincy was rather complicated, she was not sure if she could commend Lillian's actions. Was she going to let Lillian get away with such an underhanded act? Damn, this is not a... Why do you bring me in with these decisions? I don't get to come in on, like, some other ones? See, I don't want to agree with her, like, I don't want to say, yes, beating up people is good. You should always beat up people to get your way. But I also don't want to berate her because we're just now becoming friends with her again. You know, we're gonna stand up for something. We're gonna berate her. Silly Lily. Was that it? Was that the berate? Oh, that almost doesn't even sound like a berate. That sounds like not even a slap on the hand. Tisk tisk. I can't believe you pushed her down. Oh well. Samantha chided her gently, a small smile on her face. If accidents didn't count as crimes, then manslaughter wouldn't be illegal. Wait, if accidents didn't count as crimes... Are you saying manslaughter is an accident? I don't get it. But Lillian dismissed her light scolding with a disdainful frown and a flip of her hair. Don't be so melodramatic. I didn't kill her. There's hardly a scratch on her. It's all internal. You can't see any of it. It's like putting potatoes in a sock and then beating the crap out of somebody with it because it doesn't leave a bruise. I don't know if that's true. Nobody go try that. Nobody who's watching anyways. She's incredibly durable. Well, I'll be the first to attest to that. Lillian hadn't seen how much De Quincey could drink before she threw it all back up, like Samantha had. What? And after De Quincey had the most unfortunate fall and tragically twisted her poor ankle, I offered to find a teacher and inform them of the accident, like the good Samaritan I am. So right now I'm looking for a teacher to help. I didn't use my phone because fuck that. You mean you ran away? Please don't make me sound so irresponsible. I was not running away. I do not run away from my problems. I am running in a direction towards the solution, but I am taking a leisurely walk towards it. I never realized you were so shameless, Lillian. I thought you were a stickler for the school rules, being the head of the student council and all. I am, but some rules must be bent to preserve the peace. That is how democracy works. How corrupt! It's no wonder Georgia is so disillusioned with you. I thought you said you were going to help us poor students when you became the head of the student council, not oppress us with brute force. Georgia is disillusioned about everything. She's even disillusioned about being disillusioned. What? I have no desire to cater to fools who wish to cause trouble for the sake of it. Did she really try to sneak a bear into her dorm? She tried to argue on behalf of it, and so passionately too, I was almost moved to tears. And yet you say it with such a straight face. I was being sarcastic. Samantha reeled in Fox's surprise, her eyes wide. You! Sarcastic? But isn't sarcasm the lowest form of wit? Some situations are so ridiculous they deserve nothing more than sarcasm. Heh, you're becoming awfully conservative in your old age. Don't be so facetious. I'm only a couple of months older than you. Ow, did she just slap me? Samantha winced, pressing a hand against her forehead. Did Lillian really have to flick her? That sounded like a heavy-ass flick. What'd she flicker her with? Like her elbow joint? Just slapped her hand across the back of my head? Those in power always punched downwards, didn't they? What? Or in this case, flicked. Lillian's fingernails were carefully groomed and filed to perfection, unlike Samantha's, which were little more than bitten stumps. Being flicked by Lillian's far superior fingernails, even in an act of playful jest, was quite painful. There was a big thud. How long are these fingernails? And yet, even so, Samantha couldn't help but smile. She could hardly believe it. She was actually talking to Lillian. They were having a conversation, and they were getting along with each other. This only served to confirm things in Samantha's heart. Being by Lillian's side was where she belonged. Well, we are going to try and not throw Roberta under the bus if things happen and we have to make a decision. Without Lillian, Samantha couldn't smile, couldn't laugh, could hardly even speak. For the last 3 months, Samantha had felt like the mermaid from that fairy tale. She had been unable to talk, and When she did, nothing had sounded quite right. Her own voice had grown softer and softer by the day, until she hardly even recognized it as hers anymore. Now that she was with Lillian, however, conversation came so easily for her. Well, we are only having like a 5-minute talk so far. Oh damn, this recording's going pretty long. So we can't really say that this is the best thing. We don't know if everything's fixed. We're just having a nice conversation right now. She felt more assured of her words, as though that truly did belong to her, and she meant every single thing she said. She had found her voice again. I'm sure something's gonna happen to ruin this moment, because I'm sure the story's longer than this, and this has been quite a recording already, so we are going to save it on this high note, and we will be back to see what could possibly happen in the next episode. Bye!